Hello, church. Welcome to this morning's lesson. We're going to be looking at the Old Testament minor prophet of Habakkuk. So, what could we have in common with the minor prophet Habakkuk today? Consider for a moment the time in which Habakkuk lived, late in the 7th century before Christ, which roughly translates to about 2,600 years ago. So, what in the world could we possibly have in common with those ancient times that had none of the technological advances that we enjoy today? I want you to just consider for a moment this cell phone. All of us have one in our pocket. Most of us, anyway. It contains more information than the storehouses of documented records that were kept by the Babylonian Empire. And they're renowned by historical scholars for the amount of records that they maintained. The same cell phone, we can Google something and in seconds retrieve information that would have taken weeks or maybe even months to locate and report on back in those days. So, with all this advancement in technology, in science, in medicine, we still live in uncertain times, as in the days of Habakkuk. We are also faced with the same problem that Habakkuk found himself in. Why does God permit evil in the world? You see, the nation of Israel during the time of Habakkuk had already splintered and divided into two kingdoms, and the one kingdom, the northern kingdom, had already fell. The southern kingdom, the tribe of Judah primarily, were falling apart and fractured because of their departure from the law of Moses. And because of this departure, they had brought the wrath of God's judgment against themselves. So, here we are today as a nation. The United States is more divided today than ever in her history. We have turned away from the founding principles of biblical truth, and we find ourselves repeating Habakkuk's questions. Why doesn't God judge the evil in the world today? Why is justice perverted? Why do the rich in their sin keep getting richer? Just like the fractured kingdom of Judah would be judged by the ruthless, wicked, and arrogant Babylonian Empire, I ask you to consider a very important question this morning. Who might God choose to bring judgment against the evils of the United States of America? Terrorists, anarchists, religious zealots? We live in some very uncertain times, surrounded by evil and sin, that as a result of the fallen nature of humanity from the Garden of Eden, in theology we call this original sin that is inherent in all of humanity. The wise King Solomon wrote these words in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11. He said, because the sentence against an evil act is not carried out quickly, the heart of people is filled with the desire to commit evil. How would you think of sin if you knew the consequences were immediate? God told the prophet Habakkuk that the righteous one will live by his faith. Now, Habakkuk obviously didn't fully understand or comprehend why God was pronouncing this judgment. However, by his faith, Habakkuk declared in chapter 3, verse 18, "Yet I will celebrate in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation." Wow, that is a man living by his faith. So, who can we turn to in these uncertain times today? Consider for a moment. We live in times where killing endangered turtles and eagles and baby seals will bring judgment with penalty of imprisonment and large fines. Yet the killing of innocent babies is not only allowed and legal, but it is encouraged. Congress even finds itself debating whether to use tax dollars to provide this atrocious evil. We live in times where the way of truth, grace, and love are silenced and called bigoted, narrow-minded, and judgmental. In these days, tolerance for immorality dictates freedom of choice while demanding all respect, yet oppressing with intolerance the way, the truth, and the life of simple Christian faith. So, who can we trust in these uncertain times? Well, Jesus declared in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened. Take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Jesus gave up the glory of heaven. He took on flesh in the likeness of humanity. He lived without sin, and then he sacrificed his life to die on the cruel cross of Calvary so that we could live. He is the only name given to men by which they can be saved, and no one can come to the Father except through the Son. Jesus invites you today to trust in him for salvation. This is not something that we can earn. It's not something that we can do anything to merit. It is an indescribable gift. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 through 10 declares, "For you are saved by grace through faith, and this is not of yourselves. It is God's gift. For we are his workmanship in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do." So God promises to reward those who believe in him. Paul declared in 1 Corinthians that we walk by faith and not by sight. Hebrews 11:1 tells us, "Now faith is the reality of things hoped for and the proof of what is not seen." Folks, we hope for an eternal home in heaven with Jesus, and we've not seen it. So that is what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. So let me ask again, what do we do during these uncertain times? And I would declare that trusting faith in Jesus is a necessity. And with that, we can echo the words of Habakkuk in chapter 3, verse 18, when he declares, "Yet I will celebrate in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation." During these uncertain times, trust in Jesus is a necessity.